Hello, I'm Anthony Sanders, and welcome to this presentation on the ecology and biogeography of Longs Peak. Longs Peak is located in Colorado within Rocky Mountain National Park. It is the northernmost 14er in the state and has an elevation of 14,259 feet or 4,346 meters. It's the only 14,000-foot peak within the park, although its nearest neighbor, Mount Meeker, is close at an elevation of 13,916 feet. The nearest town is Estes Park, which is roughly 9 miles north by northeast, and Denver is approximately 60 miles to the southeast. The Laramide orogeny created what we know today as the Rocky Mountains. This event took place between 70 and 28 million years ago. The mountains were created by block fault building as the Farallon Plate subducted under the North American Plate. Interestingly, the mountain range was created roughly 500 to 700 miles inland from the subduction zone. The last known tectonic event happened 2.6 million years ago and lifted the region 4,000 to 6,000 feet on average. Over the past 100,000 years, glaciation continued to shape the mountains in the region. Currently, there's no tectonic activity or large-scale glaciation acting on the mountains. In terms of climate, the elevation and prominence of Longs Peak are the primary drivers of localized weather, since the mountain is high enough to compared to its neighbors to create its own weather. This can be problematic for hikers who may not adequately prepare for the difference in conditions that can happen as they ascend the 5,000-foot elevation gradient from trailhead to summit. Over the past 2 decades, as you can see in the top right image, the average high temperatures have been higher, and the average low temperatures are also rising higher. Initially, the Arapaho, the Native Americans in the area, called Longs Peak and nearby Mount Meeker Nesticho, which translates to two guides. In more recent history, Longs Peak has become a very popular mountain for hikers, as well as serious rock climbers attempting the east face, which is called the Diamond. In terms of services, Longs Peak attracts roughly 25,000 visitors annually, which generates revenue from park entrance fees. Moving to plant and animal adaptations, first we have the Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, Ovis canadensis, which are well known for being the state animal. They prefer steep, rocky slopes, open grassland, alpine tundra, and snowfields. One of their physiological adaptations that helps them avoid predation is their special hooves, which allow them to grip steep rock faces that their predators, primarily mountain lions, cannot. The outer part of the hoof is hard, which allows them to maintain edge pressure, while the center pad is more supple and provides grip, which is very similar to the way modern rock climbing shoes work. They also have a double-layered coat, which is a morphological adaptation that provides insulation against cold alpine temperatures. Their preference for steep terrain is also a behavioral strategy for avoiding predators where that's where they choose to go, where they know that they will not be caught by predators. Next, we have the white-tailed ptarmigan, Lagopus lucera, which is a member of the grouse family and they will be found living in alpine regions at or near the tree line. They don't migrate seasonally, but they will move to lower elevations during the colder months, where it's easier to find shelter among the high alpine shrubs. They have a unique ability to maintain and even gain weight throughout the winter on a limited diet. During the winter, their plumage will be snow white, as you can see in the picture. Then they molt as the seasons shift, obtaining brown plumage during the summer months. This is a morphological trait that provides camouflage to avoid predators. In the winter, ptarmigans will roost in nests made of snow and shrubs, which help insulate them from the wind and the cold. Next, we have the blue columbine, Ecology caerulea, is a hardy herbaceous flower that grows in subalpine and montane environments. This plant is well suited for cold environments and has been known to survive temperatures as low as negative 28 degrees Fahrenheit. One of their physiological adaptations is their requirement for cold stratification of their seeds. The seeds require a certain amount of time at near freezing temperatures, and if it's too warm, they will remain dormant, which helps to avoid premature germination. Columbine flower shapes and spur length have adapted to suit their primary pollinators. The bumblebees will go after the pollen in the flower, and the hawk moth, which is the secondary pollinator, is suited to feed on the nectar, which the bumblebees cannot access. The dominant natural disturbance in this area is fire, which will account for over 90% of recorded disturbance events. Most natural fires are ignited by lightning, with the majority of those incidents occurring in the summer months, typically July through August. Depending on weather conditions, fire can affect anywhere from hundreds to hundreds of thousands of acres at a time. Recently, in 2020, the Cameron Peak Fire burned nearly 30,000 acres within the park boundary alone. The average fire return interval for this area and forest type is 20 to 30 years. Bark beetles and fungus are also a dominant disturbance in the area, affecting thousands of acres at a time, which typically have a 10 to 40-year return interval. And lastly, wind throw events can occur due to extreme localized weather conditions. The result of the blowdowns can also increase fuel load for fire and make forests more susceptible to beetle outbreaks because of the damage. Pollution from fossil fuel emissions and human access are the primary anthropogenic disturbances in the Longs Peak area. Emissions are usually heaviest in the summer months when park visitation peaks, this is an unfortunate positive feedback loop since visitation to the park drives revenue but also increases pollution. While they are not in the immediate area, coal-fired power plants in the counties west of the park produce nitrogen oxide emissions, which are then blown into the park by the prevailing winds. Additionally, the presence of roads has been found to contribute to physiological stress reactions in the local bighorn sheep herds. And although they're necessary for accessing the various attractions in the park, roads and trails contribute to pollution, erosion, and litter. The National Park Service actively manages Longs Peak's trails and backcountry areas. The number of visitors is tracked by trailhead and summit logs, and overnight usage is manned by way of permits. During the summer, seasonal trail crews work to maintain the various trails on the mountain. Rocky Mountain National Park is a UNESCO International Biosphere Reserve, and the objective of the Park Service is to preserve these types of natural areas as close to the natural state as possible, which is why management is so important in this area. As visitation increases, management is critical to protecting the environment while allowing visitors to enjoy the mountain. These are the references, and thank you for listening.